All right, here we go. It's Fantasy Football Now on FanStream Sports, powered by DSP Media. I'm Jeff Fidoff. You can follow me on X at FitHappens. He is Chad Rink. Follow him on X at Chad Ochorinco. A lot to talk about today. I know you probably think we are part of the ESPN Fantasy Marathon. We're like at the tail end of it. We are the 2 a.m. Waffle House visit, but we've got a lot to talk about today, fantasy football-wise. Chad, how are you, my friend?
I am doing well. How are you, buddy?
Doing great. We got this news that the quarterback said he was shocked. Anthony Richardson named the Week 1 starter for Indianapolis over Gardner Minshew. He said Rich said he was shocked to get that announcement. I don't think anybody should be shocked. I'm still. It doesn't change much for me as far as where I'm putting him. He's a dynasty investment for me. I don't look at if I have a redraft team, Chad, and I've got Anthony Richardson, my number one starter as my starter for more than 1 week, I think I'm having a bad season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he has huge upside, but I don't think it's gonna get tapped into this year. It was weird. I heard people on ESPN talking about how they should, he's not ready, so why start him? Let him sit. And then they started rattling off like Mahomes sat, Rodgers sat, Brady sat. Right. I'm like, okay, number one, they all had like legit good veteran quarterbacks all there. Like, and if you're the Colts, why
Brady
not?
Brady's a 6th round pick, and yet Bledsoe was the guy starting there, which was just fine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, you took this guy at 4, and you have Gardner Minshew. And why not? Because if you're bad, then you can just add pieces this year in the draft. So I have no problem with him starting. Get him the reps. It's one of those things. So, but I don't in a redraft, I probably won't take a chance on him at all, just because there's too many good quarterbacks that you kind of, can get to. But I like that they're letting them start. I always like if they let the rookie start, if there's no one really of significance ahead of him, just give him the reps. Plus he had 1 year starting in college too. So
I think I saw the stat that he started like 13 games since his senior year, since he graduated high school senior. He started like 13 games is all he's got under his belt.
Right.
I'm with you on that. And I'm not saying he's a 32nd best quarterback because he's not, but he's certainly in that bottom third of guys as far as a redraft league. Dynasty league, he's up the chart. I mean, loved him in a dynasty league, just not in a redraft league. All right, so let's talk about some players who you were looking at that guys you can get later in drafts that could be the ones, because it always seems like, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I always like to say it, that you're not going to win your league in the first round. You could lose it if you really botch it, but you really win it later in the draft. I mean, because everyone's got the same cheat sheets and stuff they look at and rankings. They go off similar ones like that. It's finding that gem later on in the draft that could be the one that propels you to a title. What are a couple of guys you've got on your mind, ones that you could get later that could pay huge dividends?
Yeah, because if you look at last year, like Josh Jacobs, I think was like a 6th, 7th, 7th round pick last year. He was huge. And there's always those guys that just you find late in the draft. So most of these guys are relatively late, but they're, I think, in decent situations where if you get a good team around, they're not going to hurt you. One guy I think is in the 9th round is what I have. So the first guy I have is Brock Purdy. His ADP is 165. So you're looking in a 12 team, he's like 13, 14, somewhere in there. I was looking at the stats. He when he's played those last 6 games of the year, he averaged right around 18 fantasy points per game. And that would have put him right around 10, 11, 12, right with Cousins and that type of deal. So if you can get a quarterback that late, that is going to be a top 12 quarterback, you can do a lot of things. Plus, if you get Kittle or Ayuk or McCaffrey, even one of those stacking situations where it can kind of boost your team if you stack a high-powered offense. Like I think they said, like if you had Allen and Diggs or Kelsey with Mahomes, Hurts with one of those two, it boosted up your chance of winning or making the playoffs, by 10%. So Purdy's one of those guys because he looked good last year. He's got all the weapons. So that's the one I think he could be a league winner if it's one of those that you're waiting on quarterback.
And I think for me, Chad, with Purdy, because coming off the injury still, I don't want to hit my number one quarterback. Somebody we wait on quarterbacks, but I certainly, if I wait on a quarterback where I'm taking one like in say the 7th or 8th round, I'm going to target Purdy as my number 2 because I think Purdy's because of the ceiling there. And in the Shanahan offense, I trust Purdy, even though we never heard of him. And it sounded like a made-up name until he got drafted. That Brock, right. He's Purdy. But it's I think that if I'm waiting on a quarterback, I'm going to make sure I target him as a high-end number 2 quarterback who could have to be number 1 for me sometimes.
Yeah, you're not drafting him. If you're waiting that late for a quarterback, then, that's just ridiculous. You don't want to wait that long. But, yeah, he's a good guy to have. If you're getting that in that Cousins, Tua type range, grabbing him isn't bad at all. So
I would love to draft Garoppolo. I'd love to draft Garoppolo and then Purdy and then bench Garoppolo for Purdy.
There you go.
Do that. That'd be fun
do that. There you go. Right. Yeah. All right. So next guy I'm looking at, and I had his teammate on here, and then I switched it because I think he's a little bit he could be a little bit better. Is Jalen Hyatt?
Okay.
So rookie for the Giants. So I had Darius Slayton on there first. I'm like, no one cares about Darius Slayton. So and Hyatt's look good. He's got
Giants. Go ahead.
He'll get hurt too. So, but Hyatt's look good. He's got that speed that can just kind of open things up. So he's a guy. His ADP is at 158. So just an extra receiver that I don't know if he's going to be a league winner, but he's one of those guys that I think can go off 2 to 3 games this year.
Right.
Have big games like these, 3 receptions, 150 yards, 2 touchdown type deals. Or if he ends up being the one there, because there's I don't think they have a clear cut number 1. So Hyatt could see a lot of targets if he's not just a field stretcher. So he's one that, a late flyer on a receiver that could end up being a number 1 on a team that should be able to move the ball pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. It's I think Daniel Jones will have a decent year. There's a bunch of B and C receivers on that team. There's no stud. And Darren Waller's the stud, I guess, if he's healthy for the tight end position. But as far as receivers go, it's up for grabs who's going to get the biggest target share.
Indeed, yeah, it's Waller and Barkley, and then all the rest. So I think Hyatt can get a nice role. And probably lead that team in targets and receptions outside of Waller. So he's one to kind of keep an eye on, and especially if he starts to play a little bit in the preseason, kind of watch him as well.
All right. You got a running back or 2 that you like as well?
Yeah, one, not just because I'm a Bears fan, but, Khalil Herbert's going, in the 9th round, and he's an RB1 on a team that should be able to move the ball, team that will probably run a lot, and he can also catch out of the backfield. He really has no competition. I mean, Deonta Foreman is what he is, and Roschon Johnson's still a rookie. So I think they like Herbert, was why they didn't re-sign Montgomery. So Herbert in the 9th round as an RB1 on a team that can be kind of explosive. And we saw what he did in that preseason game, taking that little dump pass to the house. So he's a guy I'm really kind of targeting. And again, not just because I'm a Bears fan, but he has some talent. He's looked good, and he should be able, I would imagine, have at least 20 touches a game. So, getting that in a 9th round is kind of huge.
Yeah, if he'll get 20 touches, I'll agree with you on that. I'm just not convinced he'll get that much. And my concern is that I don't know which Bears running back to go with, because really the best running back is the guy who takes snaps. That's the best running back they've got. And the fact they've added these passing weapons, they should have more red zone opportunities, but I don't know where that will translate. As I'm looking at that Bears backfield, and Deonta Foreman, he's very productive last year. They did spend a high draft choice, or fairly high draft capital, Roschon Johnson. He's got talent as well. It's just hard for me to put my finger on who I think will be the best guy there. But if you tell me 20 touches a week, if you feel confident in that, I would put him up higher on my board as well.
I just think he'll probably get 5 receptions around there a week, and so I think 15 carries too. So we'll see. Like I said, that's it. But he can make the most even out of 15 with his explosiveness.
You got anybody else on your list there before we dive into?
Yeah, there's
a couple of teams from the South Division?
Yeah, there's one guy who it's Alec Pierce. I think he's got some talent. He looked good when he was at Cincinnati. It's just all going to be dependent on what you get from Anthony Richardson. So, he's getting down at 171. So he's like extremely late. The only thing I ever put on there was like, are you even going to take a chance on any Panther or Texan wide receiver this year in a redraft?
I don't think I will. I know Thiel's in Carolina now, but their offensive line still sucks. It's still, I should say, their offensive line is still in question. Let's put it that way. So that gives me pause right there. And that I don't know if the offensive line is going to give Young enough time to actually throw the ball much anyway. So I'm probably staying away from any wide receiver for Carolina. On Houston's side, and this probably, I don't want to look like a damn Buckeye homer by saying that he could be better though, but I do like Nico Collins a little bit. I think I've heard good things about him in camp so far. I seem to always be the guy who ends up with Robert Woods on his team at some point for some reason. And I hope I'm not there this year, but it seems like, get a competent quarterback throwing to him. He's in. So if I was going to take one, I'd take Nico. Cooks, I don't think Cooks, I'll get the value where I'd have to take him. I know John Mechie's there now, John Mechie the third, right? He's the one who had the leukemia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's back there in camp now. But, I think that's probably maybe Tank Dell, I guess. I don't know.
I'm leaning more towards the Texans guys than the Panthers guys. I don't know why, but I just am. I think Collins can be a player. Tank Dell's look good. Stroud and him seem to have some sort of connection. And but I'm not. It's one of those things I'm not really relying on it, and I'm not going out of my way to try to seek any of them out.
We had the news come down about Dalvin Cook, signing with the Jets. He's not in camp yet, but he is signing with the Jets. And on the same day that was announced, or the next day, is when Breece Hall ended up getting off the PUP list and now back in camp as well. And I know you've done a couple of drafts since then, and I'm curious to where did Hall, and sometimes you assume everyone in your draft that you draft with knows this news, so it doesn't get skewed one way or the other. But did Hall or Cook move one way or the other more than you thought they would?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because Breece Hall is getting drafted regularly end of the second in both a 10 and 12 team, maybe at the beginning of a third on a 10 team. He is now, I've done 3, and he's right now usually more towards the end of the fourth than the middle of the fourth round. So he's fallen 2 full rounds. And Cook's creeping up. He was always kind of just falling in that 7th round because I think people just knew he was talented. He was going to land somewhere, and now he's creeping up to the end of the 6th. Like I took Cook I took him at the 702 in this one draft, and the next draft I did, he went like at the 610 in a 12 team. So he's moving up slightly. I imagine he may move up more, but I wasn't drafting Hall at all in the end of the 2nd round. You tell me he's going to slide to the end of the 4th. I think he's the better value right now, just because I think he's the better running back.
He's certainly got less injuries. He's got less carries, less touches. Cook, has not. Cook's been good every year, but he hasn't been great every year. Right. And I was surprised that the Jets. I don't know how much the Jets really needed him. Especially the price they got him at. I think it's $7 million, potential for $8.5 million. But it'll be interesting to see how they divvy up the carries. And Rodgers always likes veterans around him anyway. He feels more comfortable doing that. I feel like that's the way he usually is. He gravitates toward veteran receivers. Like he gets his boys to come with him when he goes to a new place, like he's done this year with the Jets. But I feel like now, though, I think that when I go into drafts, I think Cook will get drafted sooner than I want to take him. And I think Hall, I have a better chance of getting the value on him because I think I think it's going to keep plummeting with him, but especially as soon as Cook starts getting more press, more carries in the Jets uniform, and then when he comes out of Hard Knocks and Aaron Rodgers sings his praises, and these kinds of things, that's all going to boost the value for him. So let's wrap up on this one now. We got the Eagles and Browns game, Thursday Night Football. Browns it's in Philly. And typically this is a game where you think you would see more of the starters, but I'm not getting that feeling from the Browns like we're going to see a lot of starters in action here again. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is starting quarterback for them. And then I think Kellen Mond's going to be the one who comes on in the second half, which doesn't do anything for fantasy. None of that matters because you're not going to have either one of those guys on your team. But I can't think what I'm going to pull from this other than looking for injuries again.
Yeah, I don't think so because I don't think the Browns. I don't think Chubb plays. If he does, maybe a series. But why would you? Like you know what you have in Nick Chubb. He doesn't need it. So you really need to find out who. The only thing on the Brown side is who could maybe emerge as the RB2. Right. Because it's always seemed like even when Hunt was hurt, you had Dearness Johnson came in and looked pretty solid. So whoever and Chubb's one of those guys where he's not huge in the passing game. And so, they'll give him some breathers. So whoever's the RB2 in Cleveland usually has some sort of fantasy relevance, especially if Chubb goes down. So it's going to be interesting to see who that might be. And I don't think the Eagles are going to play. Like, if you're the Eagles, you got the Super Bowl loss, you got the long playoff. What you have. You have everybody coming back. You had Swift play a little bit last week. He was new to the team. You had Penny who's new to the team. Why would you play anybody? So I'm not going to be super interested except to see any kind of injuries. Although DRT is exciting to watch. So
yeah, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, but fantasy wise, there's really nothing. The only thing I think really is who's the RB2 in Cleveland.
Right. Yeah. And on the Eagles side too, and something you have to think about if you're Philadelphia, and we've seen this before in fantasy sports, but also just in general football. When you play until the middle of February, that's a lot different than being done beginning of January, for your body. And you see it all the time. And just like I remember Ray Rice, after that long Ravens run, Super Bowl run, he was garbage the next year and was never the same. After that, he was done because of the off the field stuff. But when you get certain players that are of a certain stature, if they play that many snaps or get hit that many times or whatever it is, if they're playing until that late, they're losing a month of recovery time off everybody else in the NFL, or most everybody else, I should say. And so that's a big deal you got to look at, too. That's why I don't expect, Philly to do much as far as starters go. Jalen Carter will play. He had a sack in his, first or second snap he played. Yeah. That Eagles defense is going to be so incredible.
It's going to be so good. It's Georgia. It's pro Georgia. There's all Georgia players, which is kind of smart. Like, hey, let's just take all the players from one of the best defenses in college. They all know each other. They all play together. Sure. I'm interested to see because I'm in an IDP, so I really would like to see Kobe Dean get a little bit more run. I was so pumped on him last year, and then it sounded like he wasn't going to get a whole lot of playing time. So that's really what more I'm interested in. That kind of stuff. See if Myles Garrett takes his helmet off, hits a quarterback or whatever with it. So those types of deals. So I finally did because I went to Vegas last April and I just put a $10 bet on it because it was plus money for the Browns to not make the playoffs last year. Right. And it was plus money for them to play. So I won and I found it. I forgot I hadn't mailed it yet. So I just mailed it like 2 weeks ago. So I'll be getting $23 in the mail. So
there you go.
It'll be good times.
There you go. All right. Awesome, Chad. Well, I'll tell you next time, let's do some IDP talk and we'll give some insight on maybe what's going to happen in the weekend's games because everyone's playing this week in the NFL again, and maybe look at some decisions to make on some guys on which way we would lean on certain players. We'll do all that next time. Follow him on the X. He's at Chad Ochorenko. I'm at That Happens. Chad, let's do this again tomorrow, and we'll get some more fantasy knowledge out there for everybody. Like, follow, listen, subscribe, do all those damn things because we need it.
We need it.